getting hot outside, mostly from all the grills firing up. Yeah, and because it's hot as hell here in Tennessee, but sure, it's mostly the grills. Summer grilling is upon us, and if you're looking for the perfect cuts to put on the grill this year, look no further. Good Ranchers is the, capital T-H-E, place to get American beef, chicken, and seafood this summer. They sell 100% American meat and ship it straight to your door. And right now, they're giving away 2 free 18-ounce prime center-cut ribeyes to every person that uses my code DOINGGREAT. Yeah, that's over 2 pounds of prime ribeye steaks. Just add it to your order at no cost to you. You're welcome. You hear that? That's nice, right? With Father's Day coming up and all the summer events and holidays on the horizon, this is the perfect time to try a box of Good Ranchers. All the dads, every single dad, all the dads need these ribeyes. You can make a one-time purchase or subscribe and save $25 on every box. Plus, like I said earlier, if you were paying attention, if you were being a good citizen, you'll get 2 free 18-ounce boneless ribeyes. I mean, these things are good. They're steakhouse quality. Good Ranchers is giving them to you for free when you go to goodranchers.com/doinggreat. It's not the time to wait. Claim your ribeyes today before they run out. Yes, this is a limited stock item, first come, first serve, and you want to be first when it comes to Good Ranchers. They deliver the best of American farms and ranches to your door. Make sure you take time today, right now. Go to goodranchers.com/doinggreat or use my code DOINGGREAT at checkout to get your 2 free 18-ounce ribeyes. Start the summer off right with Good Ranchers American meat delivered. Thank you, guys. Okay, so welcome to the I'm Doing Great podcast, all the citizens. Do you know we have citizens of our grateful nation? We're the I'm Doing Great podcast, but our fans are called citizens because our collective is called the Grateful Nation. How do you feel about that?
Sounds kind of Marxist.
It's ZUBY. Marxist?
Oh, I want to just say before anything else, for everyone who calls us bigoted and intolerant, in honor of Pride Month, we have our very first trans guest on the show.
Thank you.
I want to just kick off with that before anyone has the audacity to call us bigoted, because we're all about equality here, and we have our very first trans guest on.
Absolutely. Should we start with pronouns?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought that was a given. Okay. I forgot name tags. Sorry.
I'm going to ignore them because on an episode that they're probably going to go back to, Mike said he's never going to have a trans person on.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Promises are meant to be broken, right? Well, no, rules are meant to be broken.
Yeah.
Well, Zuby's only on because she,
okay.
We'll change it as it goes, depending.
Broke the deadlifting record. Why don't you tell everyone about your incredible success as a trans woman?
It's amazing that it's been more than 3 years since that, and this conversation is still going on.
Yep.
It's still a debate. So yeah, back in February 2019, I posted a tweet and a video on Twitter. It was a 9-second video of me doing a 230 kilo deadlift, where I said something along the lines of, I keep hearing about how biological men have no strength advantage over women in 2019. So watch me destroy the British women's deadlift record without trying. P.S. I identified as a woman whilst lifting the weight. Don't be a bigot. I had 18,000 Twitter followers at the time. I just put that out there thinking, okay, I think this is kind of funny and maybe it'll get a couple retweets and laughs. It ended up getting over 4 million views just on Twitter alone, many million more on other platforms. It went viral across the world, introduced me to millions of people, literally millions of people discovered me off of that, including very high profile people like Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and Piers Morgan and all these people. And it led to this snowball of followers and engagement and media activity. I started getting invited both in the UK and in the US to do all these interviews and podcasts and things like that. And people go viral on Twitter all the time. Well, no, let me restate that. Tweets go viral on Twitter all the time.
Yeah.
But in my case, I myself went viral because of everything I'd done leading up to then. I had my whole catalog of music. I'd started my podcast by then. I was putting out other interesting content. So it wasn't just like, oh, look, LOL at this one funny tweet. It was like, oh, okay, this is a guy who is saying something and is offering something to the world. So a lot of people discovered me through that. But then, 3+ years later, things continue to grow and develop and evolve because I've somehow become this, it's hard to describe what I do these days because it's so multifaceted, but a lot of people know me for a lot of different reasons, and I've helped, inspired, and motivated people in a lot of different ways beyond just my music, which is what everything started with. So here we are now. Happy to be here.
Does that record still stand?
Yes, you can Google it right now. British women's deadlift record.
Wow. Google it right now. That was one of the most requested questions that we had gotten for the Q&A. It's like, does that record still stand?
Yeah, I think it would take a special woman to break it. I mean, the one that went viral was 230. My PB is actually 275.
What's the exchange to pounds?
606 pounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it would take a
It's heavy.
It would take a very special woman.
Like Leah Thomas, maybe.
I don't think Leah
She's
Thomas.
all arms.
I think perhaps another former.
Oh my God.
What was the What's the New Zealand? The New Zealand power lifter.
Lauren Hubbard.
Yes.
Lauren
Yeah.
Hubbard.
Laurel
Yeah.
Hubbard.
Laurel
Yeah.
Hubbard, yeah.
Yeah, she's a beefy
Strong,
lady.
man.
She's a beefy lady. Yeah. Beefy man, woman. You know what's interesting about ZUBY is that I was talking to Jose about you the other day.
Okay.
And
Who's that? I don't know who that is.
Jose is a friend of ours.
Okay.
He's just online he does online marketing. He's, very good at what he does.
Give a
But
little context because I'm out of the loop.
he's helping me build a couple things with my fitness brand. And so he's worked with you before. And we were talking about how you're actually not political.
Not particularly.
Yeah, you're not political, which is funny because your name often gets dropped into like conservative influencers. I mean, I'm sure that you have a lot of conservative values, but you actually don't talk about politics in the way that a lot of political pundits do or people who are, self-proclaimed like conservatives. You just say common sense things that people believed 5 to 10 years ago. And now they're just considered bigoted or insulting or whatever it is. And it's funny because you often just get tossed in with the alt-right. Where
what even is the alt-right?
Yeah, what even is the alt-right? Exactly. I mean,
Nobody
Joe Rogan's now on the alt-right. But it's funny because you're not really actually even that political.
It depends on what level you look at politics, I think. So on a party level thing, like you won't hear me often tweeting about Labor and the Tories or Democrats and Republicans or even the terms the left and the right I typically avoid for various reasons. So I won't get into the nitty gritty of all of that day to day, what's happening in political parties and the drama and the soap opera stuff. Like, I don't really care. I'm a big ideas person. I'm interested in humanity and everything that comes with that. I'm trying to understand the world, understand myself, understand people in it, understand us physically, mentally, spiritually, and try to improve in all these areas, right? That's what I'm about for myself and also trying to inspire and encourage in other people. And directly and indirectly, that does lead into the world of politics to some degree. I'm very interested in society, culture, morality, ethics, why people believe what they believe, think the way they do. So you can't avoid some of those political conversations. We talk in a very different way and have different interests, but I think someone like Jordan Peterson sort of shares that in that he himself his message is not about politics.
Right, exactly.
He's viewed through this very political lens because so many things are politicized now. But if you really listen to what he's saying, it's not really political in that direct sense. It's more about understanding humanity, understanding history, understanding our psychology,
how we interact with
each other, how to lead a good moral and ethical life, and so on. But as I said, now even very basic concepts such as personal responsibility and accountability are considered, you can talk about, I've heard people say things like personal responsibility is a right-wing talking point. And I'm like,
yeah,
that's so funny.
Is it? Is that where we are?
Absolutely ludicrous is what it is.
Should saying that, only women get pregnant, is that political? Is that a political statement? It's deemed that now. It's not a political statement. It's a biological, it's a biological reality. But we live in this very strange time where it's so polarized, and I think politics has kind of become both a sport and religion to a lot of people. So they can't really get themselves out of that frame.
Right.
That's why it's very easy to get blackpilled.
Oh, it's so easy to get blackpilled.
Yeah, just because you have a normal, common sense, logical point of view about anything now, and you're ultimately deemed right wing. You're ultimately deemed alt right. you're ultimately deemed a Nazi. And it's just like, well,
Only
what's the point?
by
of
a couple of knuckleheads on Twitter, though, and a couple knuckleheads in real life. That's the
yeah,
truth
no one
of it.
ever like no one ever talks about politics this way in person. It's very rare.
Yes.
It's like if you're at a rally, if you're at a protest, sure, you'll meet some of those people. But when we're having conversations like this, or I mean, I have some communist friends that we have rational discussions about things because there are a couple of things that we will agree on, like certain government agencies definitely don't need to exist. So it's very odd that
We need a secret police, though.
secret police, probably not. No, they might think so. They might think so to fill up the gulags, but no, not us. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was living in San Francisco, I would have discussions about politics with people who were very, very far left.
Yeah.
And it never delved into the kinds of conversations you would have with somebody on Twitter.
Yeah, well, humanity is an important part, right? Like when you are sitting or standing in front of another human being and you can look them in the eyes and see
Yes.
their body language
Yeah.
and see their reactions. Unless you're a psychopath, it's pretty hard to be as nasty as some people behave online.
Or sociopath,
because we have a natural human empathy. And I think one of the big problems that we are having over the past 15 years, really accelerated over the past 5 or 6, is the fact that so much communication is happening online. And it's happening in a very limited way where people are rewarded through dopamine for saying stuff that's extremely inflammatory and hyper-partisan, all based on straw man, all based on emotionality and hitting certain triggers. The mainstream media outlets do this. Even the so-called leaders are doing this. And it's really devolving humanity in a way. It's great that we can all connect with each other. But when it's just a screen and you're tapping buttons, and no one is immune to this. I'm not speaking like I'm immune to this, but it's very easy to forget you're interacting with another human being, especially if they're hiding behind an avatar and they haven't even got their name there. And you're not even sure, is this a bot? Is this a real person? Whatever. And also on a platform like Twitter, where most of these conversations happen. And I don't hear a lot of people make this point, but conversations happen backwards on Twitter. And that's a big problem.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that when you meet someone in the real world, how does your conversation begin?
Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, hey, how you doing? You establish rapport and commonality.
Right.
You don't start by throwing out your hot take on whatever random subject of the day that is very, potentially, divisive or at least contentious or whatever. And that's how conversations happen. I mean, I love Twitter, but really it's this sort of giant room where you just go in and you shout something and then other people shout back their responses.
Yeah.
So and it could be an opinion on anything. There's no topic. No one says, okay, what should Zuby's next tweet be about? I can just go on there, just say, this is my opinion on whatever. And then a random stranger walks into it and encounters it. And they very quickly form an entire picture of who I am as a human being, positively or negatively, based on their response to that thing I'm saying. And in real life, that doesn't happen. If you're even going to get into topics such as politics and religion and social issues, and that's not how you start a conversation, right? You might establish all this commonality, and then you've been talking for an hour, and you start broaching some of those topics, and you have a chance to, even if you disagree with the person. Number one, of course, you've got that empathy, but you also have time to explain yourself and be corrected and ask the other person to explain themselves. See where you agree, see where you disagree. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I disagree with that. Why do you think that, right? It doesn't just devolve into this name calling and playing to the crowd, which, honestly is something that's hard to avoid, especially once you gain a big following and people kind of want you to do that because people want you to be that person who, it would be very easy for me to be that guy who's just that, like, super, I don't know, just goes
Clapbacky guy.
Trying to dunk on you.
Yeah, just super right wing, dunk on everyone, like certain lines, like never upset my own base. Just do that in and out. And it's kind of easy to do, and it can be greatly rewarded, both financially and socially and so on. But the reality is that, okay, my worldview isn't that, it's not that hard line. There is nuance to what I believe and why I believe it. I am open to correction. And also it's impossible to have a conversation with over 800,000 people at the same time. That's also another problem. And most people have never even tried to experience this. So they don't know what it's even like having hundreds of thousands, let alone millions of followers.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing, but it's like you cannot have a conversation with that many people simultaneously. Right now, yeah, more people will listen to this, but I'm talking.
You're talking to the two of us.
I'm talking to the two of you. We can have a conversation.
And we don't have Asperger's.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like Twitter's like. I feel like Twitter is like a room full of people with Asperger's.
It's a bunch of autists. I don't know. I just feel like it's a bunch of bots.
There are a lot of bots. I don't think it's
maybe we'll find out soon.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't think it's the majority. I just think that, like I said, all the aforementioned things almost lead to people behaving like bots because they forget they're human. They forget they're talking to humans. And you have to actually constantly remind yourself of this, like sometimes even multiple times a day, because you just see the numbers and you just see the little pictures.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, yeah, I've deleted thousands of tweets. Even some normally responses, because I might be not normally public ones, but like I'm about to respond and I'm like, you know what, like either it's just not worth it,
yeah, or
this is disproportionate. Even if someone is being a jerk, like because what's crazy is a lot, and again, people don't realize is actually when you get a really big profile on Twitter, your replies can go viral.
Right.
So you could just reply to someone, not even in a public way, and thousands of people see just the reply. So I've had ones where someone says something and I just reply to them, and next thing they're getting like they're getting piled on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that wasn't even my intention. Right. I was just responding to someone.
You're just tweeting.
Yeah, responding to someone who said something. So like we don't need to, take a flamethrower to a mosquito. It's not that deep. And so, you learn and things change, and these tools are also so new. We're not meant to be connected to so many people. It's completely unnatural.
Do you block many people?
I block people all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blocking is self-care.
Yeah. I didn't block anybody for my first 10 years on Twitter.
What is the prerequisite for a block? Like what does one person have to do to just be like, I'm not even...
It's actually a pretty high bar for me because I don't like blocking. I would ideally not block anybody. Mm-hmm. But again, once your account gets past a certain size, I'd say about 100,000 followers, then you have to, because some people are so malicious. And you also get bots, and you get people who are trying to get you kicked off the platform.
Gotcha.
So, and a lot of people don't realize that, right? Some people are like, oh, blocking is weak. Like, I don't block anyone. It's like, bro, you have 20 followers, so you don't need to block anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Multiply that by,
10,000.
Yeah. Multiply that by 10,000 plus.
By 100,000.
And suddenly you'll see, oh, okay, I get it now.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to. So number one is like spam, like people just spamming stuff, or if it's an obvious bot, then I'll block that. Just like real, like hard levels of malice, either towards myself or other followers, or even just sometimes other people.
Yeah.
Like I don't have tolerance for like outright cruelty.
Yeah,
or if someone is just being, or also like slander, when someone is just out there like literally spreading lies, making stuff up, then that's a block. I never block for a mere disagreement.
Right.
Disagreement.
Yeah,
that's one of my rules.
Yeah.
Never block for mere disagreement. But I will block someone for being a complete a-hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, I block if they bring up my husband or my daughter or any family. I just block.
Yeah, same. Or if it's just one of these things, especially on Instagram, where they get into your DMs and you reply, and they're like, "Well, why don't you just leave? You just leave the conversation." And be like, "Well, you can do that too."
Yes.
But then you still keep on coming back to continue the conversation. So you can either block me or not. I'm not going to do anything. And then it's like, well, you should die. I was like, okay, now I'm going to block you.
Yeah, some people are energy vampires, and
energy vampires, yes,
Yeah,
and attention
really.
seekers, 100%.
Yeah, and there's the level. There are certain lines where you just don't cross, and if someone crosses that, then I'm just like, look, I'm under no obligation to speak to you.
No, at all.
If this were real life, I'd have no association with you.
Right.
So just because it's Twitter or Instagram doesn't mean you have free reign.
It's a person literally screaming on a street corner.
Exactly.
That you walk by and you go, ugh.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you compound that with the fact that I think generally a lot of people in society are lacking a serious meaning in their life, which can, that's a product of a lot of different things. I mean, modern society, what modern society has become, I think you have mass amounts, probably more people than ever in society that have no real meaning. They're isolated.
Nihilistic.
And then on top of that, COVID happened. They've been isolated for, a better part of 2 years. And then more people than ever are unmarried and don't have children. And they're disconnected from their family. And I mean, even going way back to just this idea of the suburban American life, the white picket fence and the nuclear family is separated from everybody. And then down the line, decades and decades later, you just have a lot of people in our demographic who work jobs they hate. They're stuck in front of their computer all day long. They don't go outside. They're very unhealthy. Most people in American society, at least I'm sure in the UK too, most of them are overweight. They have a terrible diet. And then you put all that together and then they find this sort of empty meaning on social media. And they feel like they're a part of something because they've never really been a part of something bigger than themselves before. And then another reason too is just the complete lack of God in society, and then the decline of organized religion. And so you're just leaving people with this empty hole in their heart. They have no meaning, nothing. And then they take to Twitter, to Instagram, and they find something that feels like it's bigger than themselves. And then they latch onto it, and then they turn into bots.
Yep. Perfectly said. I mean, I think all across human history and all societies and countries and cultures, I think there are certain fundamental things that all human beings seek and are going to find somewhere, right? So, for example, purpose, meaning, community, a sense of right and wrong and morality, some form of outlet for their anxiety or aggression or energy. All of these things are things that people seek, and there are very healthy places to find them, and there are extremely unhealthy ways to find them as well. So I think it's just a given that human beings are going to seek these things. It doesn't mean they're all going to find it in the same place and it's going to manifest in the same way. But to me, it's almost like a given that, yeah, of course, people want that. So when I am seeing this type of behavior and you're seeing this lashing out or the attacking or trolling or this or that, it's like that's that person's outlet. So we go to the gym. Right. So, and I feel it. I'm sure you feel it. If you don't work out for like 3, 4, 5 days, you feel more antsy. You feel more aggressive.
I haven't worked out 3 days. I feel like crap.
Your temper is not as long. You feel off balance. You're more likely to snap at someone or say something that you don't really mean, and so on, because your body it needs to get rid of that somewhere. And I have a theory about this. I have no idea if any actual scientists have looked into this, but I have a big theory that human beings have almost like a baseline level of anxiety, right? Because all through history and still in many parts of the world, your primary instinct is survival.
Yeah.
Right. So we are designed and built to survive, right? We're built to handle famines. That's part of actually that even leads into obesity because some of those genes and stuff. So we're built to be able to handle famine, to handle war and the threat of war, to handle the threat of plagues and pestilence, to go out and hunt food and gather farm and all of this. And so normally, I think in the past and in many parts of the world, that baseline level of anxiety, let's call it, or energy, dissipates through natural means, just through survival. When you make survival extremely easy, when it's so easy to make a living, like we could sit. I mean, if you like, we all primarily earn our living online. Like, I could sit in this room for the next year and earn money, get fed, talk to people, communicate. Like, I could literally not leave this chair for the next few years, and it wouldn't be good for me, but I could technically survive. And that's such a new phenomenon. Yeah. Right. I don't need to go out and hunt my food. I don't need to fish. I don't need to pull stuff out.
You don't even really need to protect yourself from intruders.
Don't need to do anything.
Right.
And so if it's like that, but you still have that anxiety, right? I've never before, anxiety is such a weird word because when people say like, honestly, I don't really know what it means, but I try to empathize. But it seems like that you still have that in you and it's not going anywhere. Right. So it's like it's building up in people. And when you go to the gym, you get rid of some of it. When you go for a run, you get rid of some of it. When you go and build something with your hands or you do some type of task, you get rid of some of it. Creative energy, you write a song, you create a video, something, you're getting rid of some of that. And I think that people who are generally healthy and balanced, whether or not they know it, they're constantly getting rid of that in a healthy and productive way. And other people who are angry or whatever, they're getting rid of it in a negative way. They're trolling on Twitter, they're screaming at people, they're lashing out, they're screaming at protests, they're just getting it out in another way that's not particularly productive. And then you have others who just let it build up. And then they're all, that's when they start having their mental health issues and having anxiety and needing this and needing that, even though they haven't like been through something that's so severe that they should need a therapist or some type of psychotropic drug or something, but they just are not in any healthy way getting rid of all of that. Outlet. So that is my kind of theory. And this is also my theory of part of why, we've briefly touched on family and connections and stuff like that. But that's also part of my theory why this is such a unique problem to this degree in the modern West, where life is so comfortable. And for the past couple of days, really, in our generation, we haven't really had to struggle for much in that typical sense. Yeah. In fact, the struggles are oftentimes a result of the excesses of our society. I mean, obesity is a much bigger problem than starvation is not a problem. Obesity is a problem. There's all these problems of excess. There's excess this, excess that. It's leading to more narcissism. Yes. People want to be different and everyone wants to be special to the point that you can make up your own gender and make up your own pronouns, and people are just doing all this weird, goofy stuff.
The oppression Olympics.
It's all goofy. Like it's all silly, right? This is a society where people don't have real problems, right? Go anywhere where people have real problems that they're dealing with. There's still only two genders. No one's having these crazy conversations about
self-mutilation.
No,
in order for society to accept you.
It's not even considered, like it's not even on their radar. No. And it wasn't on anyone's radar here until relatively recently. And so I think it's great in so many ways that we live in the most prosperous, least discriminatory, most wealthy, highest standard of living, longest lifespan, and so on.
Of all time,
of all places. But with that creates a whole host of new challenges. And I think so much of the stuff that we speak out against is really just that overcorrection and us as a society not really having, it's also new. Yeah. And people don't really know how to deal with it.
You're unique to me because you're very familiar with American culture, but you didn't grow up here. You actually grew up in Saudi Arabia. Yeah. And then when did you move to the UK? Because you were born in the UK?
Yeah, I was born in the UK. Moved back to the UK permanently in 2008. Okay. After I graduated from university. Okay. But I also went to boarding school in the UK from the age of 11. But I was back and forth between Saudi and the UK. Okay. From 11 to 20.
Nigerian family, right?
Nigerian family originally, yeah.
I had a friend in college, DJ Zeke. I remember this. Nigerian parents, lived in Queens, big Nigerian community in Queens. I forget, is it Flushing? I can't remember it, but I mean, just those. Did you have a good relationship with your parents?
I still do, incredibly.
Your father?
Incredibly.
Yeah?
Yeah, love him. Just spoke to him on the way.
Can I talk about something?
Sure.
I want to get your opinion about this, and I've been thinking like really hard about this. Did you happen to see Matthew McConaughey's speech at the White House?
I didn't. I only saw reactions to it, but I haven't actually listened to the speech.
I made sure to go back and listen to the whole thing yesterday because I wanted to make sure that I was accurate. Now, what he does for about the first 13 to 15 minutes was he talked about the kids who were killed. Mm-hmm. He talks about each of the kids and what their hopes and dreams were. And then he talked about the parents. He talked about a couple of the teachers that were killed. And then he went on to talk about his realistic approaches to solve, mass shootings in America. And he mentioned a couple of things. I took some notes down. He said, safer schools, mental health care, He wants to he wants restrained sensational media coverage of these types of shootings, which I think, okay, cool. That's valid. I actually agree with you on that one. Actually, on the first two, mental health care, definitely. Safer schools, for sure. We all want safer schools. Restore family values is what he says. He was kind of vague. Responsible gun ownership. Don't really know what that means. Background checks. We have those. Minimum age raise of, buying an AR-15 from 18 to 21. I really don't see what that's going to do. waiting periods in most cases to get certain types of guns. You have to wait a long while. And then there are other cases where you have to apply for tax stamps to have certain accessories or certain types of rifles. So those types of waiting periods are already in place. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the one thing that he didn't mention that I'm going to bring up? The one thing that I think is probably the cohesive, like just alarm bells going off when a mass shooting happens like this, and then you see the person who's responsible, especially when it involves kids. Mm-hmm. What's the one thing that you think they all have in common?
Usually an absent father.
Spot on.
Yep. Absent father or very weak in peripheral.
Matthew McConaughey talked about being a father. He talked about being a dad to his 3 kids. Mm-hmm. And he's slamming his fist down, full of emotion. He's an actor. He's able to deliver lines really well. And the one thing that stood out to me, and I got pissed, is that no one mentioned fathers.
So he didn't encapsulate that in family values?
No, he just said restoring family values, restoring American values. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's totally intentional, because right now they shy away. And when I say they, I mean corporate media, Hollywood, entertainment, influencers. They shy away from specifically naming fathers and mothers.
Why do they do that? Look at the pictures. Look at the mugshots of these kids. Do any of them look like they have stable relationships with their parents, let alone with their fathers?
And then also, to add some color to that, I don't know how much you guys know about this guy who shot up that school. Father left the picture, was not at all involved. He lived part-time with his mother, who had a longtime boyfriend living in the house, who admitted in an interview that he had no relationship with the boy. And then he was in between his grandmother's house and his mother's house. And then the biological father was also interviewed and said that he just feels bad that he was not present in the boy's life, so much so that the boy's sister refused to speak to their biological father because he was so absent. So I mean, that's just, this kid is the quintessential picture of that.
And if you want to get apart, I don't know how it is in England, but if you want to get apart from even mass shooters, because people on the right, gun advocates, they always like to point to places like Chicago, Baltimore, LA. Like, look at all the gun violence when it comes to people in gangs and stuff like that. Do these kids have fathers present?
No.
And the ones that have father figures present, guess who those kind of guys are? They're the guys who are the leaders of these gangs. Yes. They're the drug dealers who say to these kids, look, you can be like me if you want. There's no positive role model. And I'm not saying that everyone who has a father is not going to turn into a mass shooter, is not going to commit acts of violence, but it helps. And I was just so angry that nobody talked about this.
Of course, man. They never do. It's the exact same thing.
I won the lottery. Yeah. You won the lottery. Yeah. Because you have a great relationship. You have a great relationship. I have a great relationship with my father.
If you want to have a real conversation about, people love to throw around this term privilege. And if you want to actually talk about that conversation seriously, and you're not talking about like having good parents privilege and having a present and loving father privilege, then you're not a serious person.
No, not at all.
Absolutely.
And I understand why people are uncomfortable with this, because the truth is, in our generation, there are, hundreds of millions of people who are not from stable families, or, there have been some father completely out the picture from day one, or there's, very high divorce rates, up to 50% if you go back a couple of decades ago. It's actually come down a little bit now. So people feel a type of way about that, and people often take it personally when you're not speaking personally, right? And you're not trying to attack or shame or whatever, especially someone it's not like, that's not even on you, right?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
What your parents do or did, like, that's not on an individual. And that can be true, whilst at the same time, we can recognize as a society that optimally, it's optimal.
It is
all other things being equal, even simply because 2 is more than 1. Right. So, and it's
just especially for young men.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because I don't think anyone ever questions the necessity of a mother. Right.
Like, we all understand we need our moms.
There's been this several decades ago. There was a very intentional push for the concept of men and fathers being merely an option. Mm-hmm. Right. This was pushed by the feminist movement. Yeah. It was pushed in media, in TV. It was promoted through the welfare policies and so on. And there's just been this notion, and it still exists to some degree, and millions of women in the West have bought into it, that men are just optional, and that fathers being present aren't, like, men are just sperm donors, essentially. and them being involved is not that important. And look, I'm not, to be clear, I'm not letting men off the hook at all either. There's so many men who have not stepped up to that responsibility. They've gotten a woman pregnant and then just disappeared out the picture, or they haven't done, they've checked out. They've, abstained from that responsibility. And then of course, the state will come after them and all of that. So this is something that it doesn't have. I think another reason why people don't like discussing it is because it's not a political solution. It's not a fast solution. This is a generational thing. Yeah. This is something that it's up to the next generation. People can recognize, okay, like a lot of people in that past generation kind of messed that up and didn't do that very well and set a good example. So maybe in our generation, future generations, we need to do that. We need to do that better, at least try to, right? I think there's a big difference in a society between having a standard and an ideal, and then understanding and being compassionate and empathetic, recognizing that for a billion different reasons, not everyone is going to reach that. Right. Versus trying to obliterate and remove the standard and ideal completely. Yeah. Right. You see this in various things. I feel the same way with the fat acceptance, so-called body positivity thing, right? Of course, like there are so many reasons. It's not hard to understand. And I talk about it as a Brit all the time, even having that perspective of like, man, like it's no surprise so many people in the USA are fat. Yeah. Right. And you can understand all of the mechanisms, from the food itself to people driving everywhere to aspects of society and culture and modern workplaces and so on, that are not conducive to people maintaining a healthy body weight and being in good shape. But recognizing that it's a challenge and not everyone is going to be able to reach it. Of course, you have genetics and so on, right? You can recognize that, but that doesn't mean that it's equal or better to be morbidly obese than to be healthy. Like that's just not true. And it's not just not true. It's an inversion, and it's a dangerous inversion, because if you're pushing the message that you can be healthy at any size and people are actually buying into that, that is not compassion. That's not kind. That will literally get people killed. You want to talk about getting people killed? Literally. Mm-hmm. Telling people that they can be healthy at any size and instilling that in them. By the way, this is always only directed at women. That's not healthy. So, because people like to split everything into this binary. So if you're not pro body positivity and fat acceptance, then you must be fat phobic and you hate fat people and you're promoting fashion. It's like, no, you're just saying that this is optimal. This is what you should strive for. Right. We can recognize it's difficult. I would never advocate someone go up to someone who's overweight on the street and yell at them or call them names. Like, of course not. No. But also telling them that, hey, you're beautiful and that's healthy.
You're perfect just the way you are.
You're lying, and that's not doing them any favors.
You're lying to them, and it's a dangerous lie. It's not just a white lie that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It's actually got real consequences.
That's what I was just about to say. We're basically looking out for people's well-being without being intrusive, but also letting them know that like there are possible negative outcomes and bad consequences to this. And even if we're just going back to the whole fathers thing, listen, there are tons of people out there who don't have fathers and who have become successful, of course, well-rounded people, well-rounded individuals. I'm sure it pushes them to be, great fathers. Mm-hmm. But, it shouldn't be the rule. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that these guys who've grown up without fathers and become successful, there had to have been a guy somewhere along the way that has just been that father figure. And if we're talking about policy, like if I was the president, I would say, you don't have a father? Guess what? The government's going to give you one. But this is my government. This isn't Joe Biden's government. I'm going to say there's going to be a man in your life that is going to have a positive impact on you, and you're not going to be able to turn it down.
Yeah, well, they want to keep pointing to the exceptions. They always want to point to that one person who didn't have parents, who grew up an orphan, didn't have a dad, and they're doing great. And like my parents are exceptions. Both of my parents came from a broken home. Both of my parents came from abusive homes, and dads weren't present, and it was just total chaos in the homes. But they made a decision: we are going to break the curse. However, my parents are exceptions, because a person, a boy or a girl, without a father, 9 times more likely to end up in prison, 12 times more likely to drop out of school.
Obama said it.
Much more likely to get pregnant as a teen, like all of these factors. But people want to focus on the exceptions because it makes them feel better.
Right.
And when you focus on the exceptions, it gives people a reason to throw standards out the window.
It's so interesting. And look, I think it's one of those conversations where I think there are so many issues where our society, I say this both with the US, with the UK, needs to just have a, like, nobody get triggered week, right? Nobody get triggered. Like, put your emotional and personal stuff to the side, and let's just honestly talk about some of these various issues, right? We're not trying to attack anyone or demonize anyone or shame anyone, especially for something that they themselves are not personally responsible for. We just, these are facts. These things have been studied. You just put out some statistics, right? It's been very well studied. You said Obama brought this up maybe about a decade ago in a speech. And just the statistics. You can look at the statistics. If a boy grows up without a father, or even if a girl grows up without a father, it's more severe repercussions for the boy because children tend to primarily model themselves after the same sex parent. You can see when it comes to criminality, drug abuse, mental health issues, physical health issues, teenage pregnancy rates, risk of going to prison, risk of ending up in poverty, risk of ending up homeless. And so these things go up by hundreds of %.
Yeah.
Like multiples if a father is not in the picture due to, you could get into
whatever reason.
Why you could get into all the reasons for that. Does that mean that everyone who's no, of course it doesn't, and people need to stop with this.
I grew up without a father. I turned out right.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
We're so happy.
Yeah,
what a way to turn your life around. We're not talking about you. We're talking about the bigger picture here and statistics.
So multiple things can be true. It can be totally true. That
Two things can be true at the same time.
It can be totally true that most people who grow up without a father end up all right and don't end up in prison or whatever. Whilst it can also be true that the majority of male prisoners for violent crimes do not have fathers. Those are not mutually exclusive statements.
Exactly.
They're both facts.
Right.
They're both true. Tons of people, the majority of people are,
they're alt facts.
So
the alternative facts.
This is the problem. It's a little bit like, look, the whole past 2 years, it could be true that the COVID virus killed millions of people.
Yeah.
And it can also be true that it has a 99.9% plus survival rate in the general population. Those two statements are not mutually exclusive. They can both be true, and they both are true.
We're going to get a COVID sticker on our video.
Yeah, so
just bleep it out.
Just bleep it out. Okay, I normally call it the Rona. I should have censored. But like, both of those things can be true, and I don't know if it's immaturity. I'd like to not think it's stupidity, but I don't know if it's just like immaturity or inability for people to check their emotions that prevents them from understanding these type of statements.
They don't want to be proved wrong. They never want to hear something that makes them wrong.
But it's not even, it's not even about, it's
you don't
weird.
think so?
Like, I mean, I want to, but if you want to be right, you have to like not want to be wrong.
It's kind of crazy though, because you talk about like you take something about like abortion, right? And you say to someone, well, it's a commonly held idea and belief and, a scientific fact that, life begins at conception. And they'll say, well, that's not true. And you'll be like, open any biology textbook and it will say that. Yeah. No, well, that can't be right. Because you are not on my side. That's the only reason why you can't believe it is because you're not on my side. If I was on an opposing side, you gave me a fact and I would say, oh, let me look at that. Yeah. And if it happens to be right, okay, you're right. Let's argue on the merit of, why this exists. Rather than just saying, no, you're wrong. Can't believe it.
Look, I think people need to at least be able
confirmation bias.
We can't be dealing in this world of alternative facts.
Yeah.
Right? We need to there's facts and there are opinions, and merging these and conflating them is not helpful, right? So we can have, okay, these are facts, this is data, these are statistics, it's as valid as close to
pull up your source
as we think it can be.
Yeah.
You can even look from different sources. Okay, let's see where they all align, and be like, okay, can we all agree that these facts are clear? And then you can have a debate on, okay, why is this,
right?
Or what's the best solution for this, and so on. But we're at this stage now, and I think this is a big part of the polarization where people don't even agree on facts. Yeah, and if you don't agree on facts, or even the fact that facts exist, how can you have a conversation?
Well, that's the thing. They're trying to throw objective reality out the window.
The question is like, why? The question you always have to ask people when you're talking, why do you think this way? And not in like a combative, well, why do you think this way? It's like, okay, well, tell me why, you think this way. We've just agreed that these are the facts of what we're talking about, but why do you still happen to think this way?
Do you know something that's really good to do in these type of conversations is not avoid the word you.
Oh, you. Okay.
Yeah, because people are far more likely to take things.
You say like, why would one
people
think
go on?
this
People
way?
go on the defensive.
Yeah.
When they hear the word you, it's like
Right,
a psychological
okay.
thing. So a little psychological trick for anyone having these tricky conversations is to avoid the word you because people find it accusatory and personal.
So I shouldn't say to women, you're fat.
Well, if you could,
People are fat because.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
yes, instead of saying you're fat because,
Yeah.
Right.
People are fat
because, or people could, yeah. That it actually is. It's a little trick I learned. I'll give a shout out to Peter Boghossian. And I
was just about to bring him up.
They wrote the book How to Have Impossible Conversations.
Yeah.
And that's actually a very good point, and it's quite an easy one to remember.
You just started following me, so you didn't see this, but I put a video up of Peter Boghossian because he was doing the thought experiment. ZUBY, a very big YouTube channel, does this where they talk about spectrum. So they ask a question, and then it's, do you strongly agree with this? Do you strongly disagree with this? So I think he was at Portland State or some Portland University, and he was just basically doing that thought experiment, and he was asking people, he wasn't even asking, it was just a statement. There are two genders. So he had people lining up. What do you think about this statement? Strongly agree, strongly disagree. And then he had people up on the top of the roof of a building who were yelling down at him, telling him, fuck you, fuck you. Did you see this?
I saw that.
And when they came down, they came down to confront him about this. They didn't even know what he was doing. They really didn't even care to know. They were just saying, there are people around here who are triggered by what you're saying, and some even had to leave and go home because they didn't feel safe. And I'm just like,
they love the safety
this
language.
guy's, he's making a statement and he's asking people if they agree with it or if they don't agree with it. He's starting a conversation with people, and you people go automatically on the accusatory, the pointing the finger at someone without even trying to understand why he was out there for. He even asked them, he's like, do you guys want to know why I'm out here? And then a couple of people were like, no, we don't care.
Do you know, sorry to jump in, man. Do you know one thing is,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. One thing we need to stop doing in our society is catering to the babies.
Oh,
For real.
real.
Like we need to stop
Please.
catering.
It's the
to
most
people who
narcissistic behavior
cannot.
I've ever seen.
Honestly, like if you're going to act like a toddler, then, I mean, we're literally letting people with emotional incontinence set the policy and the rules for absolutely everybody, right? Like most people, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum or their religious beliefs or whatever, are like mature enough
Right.
to have these conversations and talk about stuff. And so for the like 2% of screaming people who get triggered by a question,
Right.
or who are offended that someone's even trying to host a conversation, like
You need to leave.
those people
They need to leave.
Go
like,
sit with the kids.
Yeah, like
Not even that.
go grow up.
Like Jordan Peterson said, I think they should leave. That's what they should do. Because if they can't handle someone on the sidewalk asking people, not themselves, how they feel about something, and they can't even walk by that sign without
that's a
getting
you problem.
triggered. Yeah, it's a 100% you problem. And I admired his patience. But if that were me, I'd have been like, listen, if you guys don't want to participate, fuck off.
Yeah.
But, he didn't do that. So power to Peter Boghossian. But I
that's
can't
how
believe
it
you
is.
brought him up. I was thinking that.
Yeah, no, that's how it is. And that's the thing. I mean, and it happens with everything, right? So some, I don't know, something comes out and like 10 people on Twitter who can't control their emotions get triggered by it and are screaming whatever, and like some company or individual or celebrity puts out some huge statement, I'm so sorry that I offended. Like, it's like, screw them.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, those people don't matter. Like, if you cannot be an adult and you go away and work on yourself and do some self-development, and then you come back, but instead it's just like, oh, we need to we've moved from survival of the fittest to tyranny of the weakest.
100%.
This happened with the whole scamdemic situation too, right? Everything was built around the most emotionally fragile and hysterical and fearful person. It's like, bro, if you want to stay in the house for a year and wear 3 masks and take 18 shots, like, you can do that.
He won't put his mask up. Can you tell him to put his mask up? I'm still vulnerable. I can't be like, shut up.
Dude, there's been vulnerable people our entire lives. There's been immunocompromised people our entire lives, but it's always been understood. You know what? If you're allergic to peanuts,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean, I mean, They do this on flights now, but that doesn't
Yeah,
mean
they do now.
no one else is allowed to eat peanuts.
Right, exactly,
It means,
yeah.
okay, you've got to be cautious.
Right.
You have this particular thing, so you be cautious about the thing you are allergic to. You
Take care of yourself, in other
don't
words.
demand everybody else must
This is how society
conform
dies.
to.
It's how society dies.
Yeah.
It's so narcissistic.
It's a race
I
to the
can't-
bottom.
It really is. Is there anything that you disagree with, let's say, conservative people?
Yeah, plenty.
Like what?
Um,
Because
Man,
we may agree with you.
Sure.
We criticize
Well-
the right a lot here.
man, I mean, when we say conservative, what is it? It doesn't even mean the same thing in our country.
Yeah,
Well, here's a question.
like culturally, yeah, go ahead.
What do you think about universal voting rights?
I'm not sold.
There you go. What do you think about pit bulls? Do you like pit bulls?
Pit bulls are cool.
Yeah, fuck
Yeah.
yeah, dude. See me.
I actually, I have a question.
Is it about pit bulls?
No, but we can come back to pit bulls.
Okay. Well, remind us to come
Because
back.
Mike is a
Okay,
pit bull apologist, but this has been on my mind. So I'll also give some context. So ZUBY has spoken at a few of the Blexit events. So Blexit is Candace Owens' nonprofit organization that focuses on empowering minority communities around the country. And I think a lot about the decline of many minority communities in America. And I have a question for you about what goes on in the UK. So in America, one of the facts that people really don't like to admit is that when you look at the difference between American-born Black individuals and Black immigrants, they are like they're two completely different demographics, even down to their marriage rates, the divorce rates, the college degrees they get, down to their spending habits, how they spend money, what they spend their money on, the way they save their money. And it's like they're two completely different demographics that really seemingly by these statistics have nothing to do with each other. And yet they're always lumped in together, right? They're lumped into the same category, but it's really American born Black individuals, this American Black culture specifically.
And raised
that-
by American
Yes,
Black parents.
that is
grandparents.
really, that's the culture specifically that is really failing a lot of young Black individuals in America. So I wanted to ask you, what is it like in the UK? Is there a difference between British born Black individuals and Black immigrants? Is there a sort of like discrepancy in the way that you see these statistics play out among these two categories, so to speak?
Britain's
Or
so
is that
weird, though,
an
because
American?
It's a classist. Like Britain's very classist, right? So
Yeah, so is the USA, but they
Yeah.
tend to
yeah.
line race over it,
Okay.
which is kind of a really stupid thing that they do in the States because it makes people miss the issue.
Yeah.
Because it's really fascinating. Nigerian immigrants, particularly, they crush it in
Yeah.
the U.S. Even Caribbean immigrants, they crush it. I mean, it is like you can't even really
Do
compare
you know
them
any Nigerians?
to American-born Black.
Personally?
She's sitting next
Oh,
to me.
well, other than Zuby, did you
Yeah, I mean, I went to school with a couple in college.
they're
yeah.
like,
They're very family oriented.
Yes.
They're very hardworking. They
Yeah.
do not play victim. Like they don't even play the game. They think it's funny. They laugh at it when we play the race card. And I'm curious what it's like in the UK. I mean, I don't know if it's
So
comparable.
man, there's so much to get into here. So first of all, I think the most important statement is to recognize that the UK and the US have very different histories and demographics as a result of those histories. So there is not an equivalent to Black Americans as understood in the traditional sense in the UK, right? So Black people in the UK are not there as a result of previous slavery. They are all immigrants, whether it's first, second, third, so on, generation. So that whole demographic of, people use the term ADOS, I don't use it, but, American descendants
Yeah.
of slaves, that demographic does not exist in the UK, whereas in the US, that could be, I think what's considered Black Americans is 13% of the population or so.
Yeah, probably
So-
11 or 12. Yeah.
So you could say, 10% plus of the population here are people whose ancestors were brought here, on slave ships.
Right.
And beyond the slavery aspects, of course, even after that, you had segregation and Jim Crow and all of these points, redlining and so on. So that's a specific demographic with a specific history where there are not people in the UK where you can compare that line. So in terms of those statistics, that statistical difference can't even really be done here. So in the US, you could compare a Black American versus a Black American who is, what would be the right term? let's say an American, let's be precise, let's say a Black American descendant of slavery or of a slave versus a Black immigrant, whether from Nigeria or Ghana or the Caribbean and so on. You could do that comparison here. In the UK, you can't do that comparison because that former group doesn't
even exist.
Doesn't exist.
Mm.
So that in itself is a factor. So that comparison can't really be done. I mean, if you wanted to have a conversation about why that discrepancy exists in the US, then I certainly have some insights into that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can't really, there's a lot of things that you can't really compare the US and UK directly on, or the US and most other countries, to be honest, because this place is so unique in so many ways. And I think people both here and abroad don't fully appreciate and recognize just how different this country is.
He uses a straw man tactic all the time. If you're talking about guns, if you're talking about, economic policy, and people bring up, well, Europe or Australia, it's like,
well, this is what they do in Denmark.
You guys are
Denmark
very
has the population
unaware.
of LA.
Right, exactly.
Of course you can have universal health care in LA.
Right, yeah.
But transfer it to the whole country. I mean, no.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work.
Even LA is far more diverse than Denmark.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Diverse,
Denmark is 94% white.
Yeah, might even be
not just white, but primarily Danish.
Yes, Danes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. In the UK, the black population is 2%.
I was just going to ask you what that.
Once you go outside of London, it's
2%.
Like outside of London. Like if you excluded London, it would be like 1%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's not
13%. There's no Latino.
I will say, I always
people.
find it to be very odd when I see a black person with a British accent. Just like when I lived in Australia, I thought it was like seeing an Asian person with an Australian accent was like watching a dog walk on its hind legs. It was just so bizarre.
I've experienced some really interesting ones. So, because I've traveled around Europe a lot, so I've met like black Polish people.
Oh, what about black Russians?
Yeah, exactly. So just like, I'm black British, you got black
Russians.
Yeah, so I remember I was in,
I
actually went to a hip hop event in Czech Republic, and there was this group of four black girls, and I recognized Polish because it's actually probably the second most spoken language in the UK, and I heard them all speaking Polish, and I was just like I turned around because they were behind me, and I turned around like expecting to see like Polish people, and I was just like, this is so interesting. Actually, in the parliament over there, there's a Nigerian Polish MP.
Really?
In I believe.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because he's there with all these like ethnically Polish people, like in their parliament building, and he's black. He's up there. Yeah, but he's speaking like perfect Polish. Yeah, like Polish is just not a language you expect. It's like
right.
So whoa, funny.
Like if you hear a black person speaking French or English or Italian or Arabic, it's like, okay, that's good. But like Polish or Czech,
what about Japanese?
Russian or Japanese? It's just like, whoa, that's
I have a friend from high school. I forget not a friend. I had someone that I went to high school with. It's always kind of like a weird kid. I can't remember his name. And even if I did, I probably wouldn't say it. But he got really, after high school, I checked in on him like on Facebook like 10 years later. He was living in Japan, full on Japanese fluently, was doing like all the Aikido, into the anime. And it's just like this person's whole personality shifted. It's like he's not American anymore. He's fully Japanese.
Trans-Japanese.
Yeah, it's like trans-Japanese, like trans-Nigerian, like Nigerian
guy.
Polish. Yeah. Oh, well,
I actually saw him when I was
Ollie
in London.
London.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
I saw him when I was in London. I walked past him and I was like,
I think he's just honestly just putting on the greatest troll in the history of mankind.
Why not?
And he's very successful at it. You know what we're talking about? He's gotten like 30 surgeries and he just butchers the language.
Did you see the post I put up yesterday about the trans person who was talking about, it was on Garbage Human, put them up. Do you follow Garbage Human?
no, I don't.
They're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So put up this whole 10-slide thread from this person on Twitter that was talking about, I believe it was a male to female trans person. So he was talking about the surgeries that he was having.
Oh gosh.
And how his stump where his penis used to be was still dripping pee. Like he can never do it. It takes him 10 minutes to empty his bladder. He's still bleeding from this place, is still dealing with this, still dealing with that.
To grow hair internally.
Yes.
Oh, dude.
You know what he said at the end of it? He was saying, where were you to tell me about this would have happened? Why? This isn't my fault. This is your fault. He's blaming his own community. I'm like, they were the ones pushing this on you.
Dude,
you fell for it.
In 10 to 20 years, do you know how many
seriously
children, current children, are going to hate their own parents?
I can't even think about it. I can't even think about it.
It's, man, like we're on I don't even think
It's a
people
weird
know.
time.
And put the restrictions and
you.
pandemic stuff on top. Man, they're gonna have I think most generations have both love and some degree of animosity towards the generations that raised them.
Sure.
And I think that a whole new whirlwind is being created under the banner of compassion and inclusion and being woke and progressive and all that. And I don't know, like these 12-year-olds and 9-year-olds and whatever whose parents are doing all this to them and so-called affirming them. Like when they're 25, 30, 35 and they're looking back on all this,
I hope they might be happy.
Well, Abigail Schreier predicts that there's going to be, number one, I hate to even say this, but a really high number of suicides, and number two, a lot of lawsuits to the parents and the medical providers who did this to them.
Dude, you're making people infertile.
Yes.
Like to take one of the most basic things, you are allowing a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 14-year-old, even 16-year-old make a permanent decision about whether or not they are ever going to be able to have children in many cases. You cannot, dude, even at 25, I'd be skeptical about people making that permanent decision.
You can allow kids, not people, you can allow kids to chemically castrate themselves at whatever age. I don't even know how young it starts, 5, 6, whenever.
Yeah.
You can allow, 14, 15, 16-year-old girls to kill their babies. There's never like there's never the mainstream talking about like what can we do to get behind our young girls who are getting pregnant. What can we do to kind of help out the young people who are confused about themselves, who are going through a possibly very confusing stage in their life? What can we do to help them? But no, you know who the people who are deemed insane in this society? The father who doesn't want to allow surgeons and doctors to chemically castrate their child.
Yes.
And they have those kids taken away from them by the courts.
Yes.
What kind of society is that?
One that I don't want to raise kids in.
No, I'd rather live under the Taliban, honestly. I honestly would. They wouldn't allow this type of stuff.
That's what Ajak always says. He always says that.
Yeah, it's a little hyperbolic. Taliban, leave me alone.
Yo, can we talk about the elephant in the room here that always is missed out in these conversations? And I don't know why no one makes this point. This is a very obvious gateway to pedophilia.
For real,
Yeah,
for sure.
Of course,
for sure.
If a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old can consent to this, what is the argument that they can't consent to sex?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People are opening a Pandora's box of all like I don't think there's any other issue where I feel so as strongly that our so-called modern society is just making such a catastrophic, like millions of people are, I don't even think they know what they're unleashing.
You're like, a crazy person. That's what they say. You sound like a crazy person.
Yeah, well, look, but everything I say comes to fruition. So I'm not right. No, so it's just so obvious. So just like how people are suddenly like, why do we have inflation now? It's like, well, like,
here's why.
It wasn't that hard to predict if you paid attention in 2020 and 2021. And you can see where these things are going. It's just called practicing second, third, fourth order thinking. It's like, okay, well, you take things to their logical conclusion, right? If a 12-year-old in like what again, look, let's even something less gross as pedophilia, right? Why can't a 12-year-old get a tattoo?
Yeah, exactly.
Why can't a 12-year-old get a tattoo?
Why can't a 12-year-old drink beer?
Yeah, why not? People think about why does that law exist? And not just in this country, why across the entire world, all types of different, why is it generally accepted and believed and put into law that there are certain decisions that children cannot make? It doesn't matter whether they want to or whether they think that they can consent or whatever, right? There could be an 11-year-old child who is in a relationship with a 30-year-old and thinks that, that's fine, and they think they've consented. But we as a society and the legal system is like, no, that 30-year-old is a pedophile and they're taking advantage of a person, and that is not, we can't tolerate that. These exist for a reason, right? Why can't you drive a car when you're 13, right? All of these things exist for a reason. And the fundamental reason is we recognize that adults and children are different. Your brain and body develop at a certain rate. It's slightly different for each individual. Right. And there are certain decisions of such a magnitude and with such potential impact that you are not fit to make that decision and consent to that choice until you are of a certain age and mental development and independence.
Yeah.
So this whole rule is being violated on this so-called trans kids issue. There's no such thing as a trans child,
Right.
Yeah.
right? But no one had even heard of that concept 10 years ago. Even 2012, trans kid, what?
Yeah.
Right?
I don't even know how I'd
Right.
react to that.
No, and it's being so aggressively pushed, and they're trying to normalize it, and it's become this trend, and parents are like, oh, look at my trans child. And
But they talk about the suicides being so high, and it's just like, well, why are you guys
here's-
advocating
no,
for
but
this
here's
if the
thing about
suicide
the
rates are so
suicide,
high?
and I have yet to hear an answer to this. If you're telling us that people who are unaffirmed in their gender have high rates of suicide, right? They are trying to tell us that if you're not affirmed in your gender identity, you will kill yourself, and the people who didn't affirm you will be responsible for it. If that is the case, before transgenderism was widely accepted in mainstream society, where were the suicides? Where were
Wait, say
all
it-
of the
say that
people?
again?
So, we're talking about how they say that if you are unaffirmed in your gender identity,
Right.
you will commit suicide.
Like a higher likelihood, yeah.
So where are all the people before transgenderism was widely accepted in mainstream society, which it is today? Where were all the people before who were unaffirmed in their gender identity? Where were the suicides then? Because the suicides before transgenderism was widely accepted in mainstream society, according to you people, you wacky gender ideology activists, according to you, then those suicides should have been through the roof before transgenderism was ever accepted. And I have yet to hear an answer to that. Oh, are you going to tell me that the numbers were just suppressed
dude,
and that
there's no answers
it
to
makes
any
no
of this.
sense.
The only line of argument is calling you transphobic.
That's all there is.
Everything on the sports issue,
Yeah.
on the prison issue, on this, on the children, everything.
What does that
Everything is
even
just,
mean, though?
You're a transphobe. That's
And then
all.
even on top of that, going back to what you were saying, as if you do need more proof, for those of you listening, if you don't know, we're talking about gender ideology, delving into pedophilia. If you need more proof, just look at the father of gender theory,
gosh.
John Money. And I'm sure for those of you who are listening, we can do a quick little overview. John Money was a sicko who derived a lot of his ideas from Alfred Kinsey, another sicko, which we can talk about in another episode. But John Money's whole gender ideology was rooted in the idea that gender and sexuality are inherently linked. And now you have gender theory activists who try to say that gender and sexuality have nothing to do with each other, which is why drag queens should be around kids, right? Because just because you have a certain gender identity doesn't mean that you're going to be promoting sexuality around children. Well, then why did John Money take two boys, twin boys? One of the boys had a botched circumcision, and they essentially like cut his penis off.
Right.
And then they ended up not circumcising his twin brother because obviously the machinery wasn't working.
Raised one as a girl.
And so raised
one as a
that boy
yeah.
as a girl, and he thought he was a girl because his parents and John Money taught him he was a girl. And then he forced the twin boys to do sexual experiments on each other, to perform sexual acts on each other. So never, ever, ever let anybody tell you that gender theory and sexuality are not related, because the father of gender theory himself, his whole idea was that gender and sexuality are intricately intertwined, which they are.
Can we talk about these drag shows for a second? I got into it with someone who was like, you know what? I'd much rather take my kid to a drag show than the church, because guess what? Churches have hurt more kids than drag shows have. And I said there are two things. Do you think I enjoy priests molesting kids? I don't. It's horrible. And also, just as many teachers as there are priests molest kids. So, I mean, if you're going to say the same thing about the Catholic Church, say the same thing about public schools, any schools or whatever.
Exactly.
Not even that. How long have kids been going to drag shows in this country?
Like
A year, 2 years,
3
maybe?
minutes.
Yeah, I was
3
going to say
minutes.
2 months at most. What?
Yeah, you're comparing what, like, 1,500 years to 2 minutes?
Also,
like, just wait what happens.
This is just, see, someone like that, they're not an honest actor,
No.
right? And something
That's what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, like you don't have to. One thing I'm moving away from is feeling like I need to debate or justify myself to people who are not honest,
Right.
and who are just purely disingenuous. And I think that's something like maybe people in general waste too much time doing. Is look, if someone can disagree with me vehemently and still be honest, and like they're not trying to straw man
You
me
appreciate
or
that
come
more.
with these
Yeah.
ridiculous comparisons or whatever. Like when people start doing that, I'll call them out on it. And if they, and they want to keep rolling with it, I'm just like, you know what, we don't need to have this conversation.
Nothing's going to happen here.
No, yeah, there's
Right.
nothing productive
Yeah.
to come of this.
And then also, this is an interesting thing they say. Going back to what you're saying about, I'd rather have my kids go see drag queens and go to church. What they try to say, and I want everyone to understand the difference here. They try to say that religion is just another form of indoctrination. I want everyone to understand what indoctrination actually is. They think that indoctrination is just teaching you one set of beliefs. That's not what indoctrination is. Indoctrination is when you teach one set of beliefs uncritically. This is an incredibly important distinction because it's not just everyone teaches their kids one set of beliefs. Your gender ideology is one set of beliefs, but I'm going to tell you why gender ideology is actual indoctrination when, yes, there are some religions and certain sects of religions that are indoctrination, but for the most part, for example, me as a Christian, I've only been to one church in all of my time as a Christian that told you not to ask questions. Every church that I've been to, they ask questions, read the Bible and write down questions. Ask your pastor, ask your priest. The church that we go to, every Sunday, my pastor says, if you have questions, you come ask. You sit down, you read your Bible, you ask questions. Now, name one gender theory activist that invites questions. Because gender theory
They shut down the interview.
They shut down the interview because it's actual indoctrination. So never, for those of you listening, never accept the argument that religion is indoctrination because it's not what it is. In some cases, it can be, but in most cases, in most religions of what I've encountered, they want you to ask questions because they want you to understand. So indoctrination is one set of beliefs that people want you to accept uncritically. And that's exactly what gender theory is.
Yeah,
what is a woman?
Kim Jong-un is a god. Kim Jong-un made 18 hole-in-ones in one round of golf. You can't question that. Well, yeah, I mean,
you can't question that.
You can't question that. We kill you.
Just like in What is a Woman, Matt Walsh is not even allowed to ask the question, what is a woman? That is proof in and of itself that your gender theory is actual indoctrination. So don't even come at me with this religion is indoctrination.
Anyone or any institution or ideology that is vehemently opposed to questions and discussions is not to be trusted, right? I mean, look, man, look at the bastardization of the word science over the past couple of years, right? It's like Do
you believe in science?
Science TM.
Oh man, science or the science. Three Hail Faucis. Yeah, like whenever people don't want to, when questions are discouraged and thinking is discouraged, that is such a huge red flag on anything. And with a person, like if I come in here and I claim to be an expert on a subject, I say I'm an expert at this thing, right? We're both into fitness, right? You're into fitness, you're into nutrition, and someone asks you a question about training, about nutrition,
fat loss,
and how dare you ask that question? You can't ask that question. You start calling them names. You start accusing them of things like what? Right? Imagine you go to a doctor and you've got some concerns about something and you're like, oh, what about this? What about that? And they're like, how dare you ask me that? How dare you, you've given me this medicine. What are the side effects? Like, how often do I?
Well, some respond like that.
Yeah, and that's a red clear sign. Yeah. Go get yourself another doctor because that is not who you want to be dealing with. And to me, like, I have certain heuristics that I can just kind of use to save my time and avoid dealing with crazy people. But like that's a big one of just like, okay, how does this person, especially if they're claiming to be an expert, how do they respond to genuine, honest inquiry, right? Okay, wait, what's going on? What about this? What about that? And it doesn't mean you need to agree with their ideas or whatever, but if they won't even answer, then they're trying to hide something. That's not.
Yeah, or they gaslight you for even asking the question.
Yeah,
that's
or attack
you.
Questions. Speaking of questions.
Hold on, we
gotta do another ad read. Gina, can you handle this for me? Gina's like the Vanna White of the ad reads here. We're gonna do a little ad read from Good Ranchers. Gina, can you find that play button and hit that for me? Because people know that I'm reading for something. Oh, hey, y'all. Before we get into these questions, I just wanted to remind you that Good Ranchers is giving away 2 free 18-ounce prime center cut ribeyes to every person that uses my code Doing Great. Did you hear me? Was that a mistake? I don't think so. That's over 2 pounds of prime ribeye steaks just added to your order at no cost to you. You can make a one-time purchase or subscribe and save $25 on every box. Plus, like I said earlier, I always have to repeat myself with these people. You'll get 2 free 18-ounce boneless ribeyes. Good Ranchers is giving them to you for free when you go to goodranchers.com/doinggreat. This is a limited stock offers, and it's first come, first serve. Make sure you take time today, right now, go to goodranchers.com/doinggreat or use my code doinggreat at checkout. Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. In one of the comments on one of the YouTube videos, I can't remember if it was the last episode or the episode before that, someone said, hey, use your code. Got some steaks coming my way. Look at that, Good Ranchers.
Love
it actually
Good
works.
Ranchers.
Your money put to good use.
Did we get some good questions?
We got some. We got some good ones on the locals. So guys, if you don't follow us on locals yet, please go over to locals, become a member, become a supporter, because then you get to ask questions. You get some extra content here with ZUBY. When are you going to ask, basically they're mandatory questions. On locals, we ask your questions. We have to. You paid for it, so we have to. Right now, we're only going to pick a couple of questions from Instagram. So if you want to ask a question to any of the guests that we have on, go on doinggreat.locals.com. Become a member.
Yeah.
I messed up on the ad read.
Citizen with a passport.
Yeah, so our citizens will have passports.
Oh, nice.
Once they're on our locals page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Co-presidents. You could be like a ambassador of the Doing Great, the Grateful Nation.
Well, he's going to have to apply. It's a very strict.
We have to vet you.
Yeah.
Okay. No Rick Grinnells or anything like that. We got to have to actually look into your past and make sure that you are
based.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to be based.
You have to be based.
Yeah.
Base is one thing. And the pipples. Oh, wait, we're going to get back to pipples, right?
Pipples.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people don't like pipples. There's this right-wing meme sort of on the authoritarian right that pipples should all be murdered.
Interesting. I haven't seen that one.
Well, you know how in the crime statistic community, 13% of the black population represents 13% of the population in America, yet they commit like 50% of the violent crimes. They relate it to pit bulls.
See, okay, you were asking like something I disagree with conservatives on.
Yeah.
The way that they misrepresent that is disingenuous.
Oh, go on.
Totally.
What percentage of black people commit crimes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So taking that, it's one of those things that's like, you know how you can like lie with statistics.
Sure.
So it can be true in a sense and very misleading in another. Mm-hmm. So it can be true in a sense that small minority percentage people from that within
13% then take 6% of that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's more like, across the country in general, even disregarding race in general, it's probably the case that like 1% of people commit 95% of crimes.
Right.
In any given demographic, white, black, Latino, whatever, across the board. So that's something that I think is used quite disingenuously, and honestly is used often to propagate actual racism.
Okay.
Right. So I don't shy away from any type of like actual stat. It's like, okay, if those are things like there's something, you can still say, all right, there's something going on here that needs to be addressed. But when people state it, they're stating it as if like 100% of that 13% is like responsible for a crime, when it's like realistically maybe like 2% of 13% is responsible.
That actually just that's good for your point, because it's not all pit bulls.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like probably 1% of those pit bulls.
Well, you got to think about it. If they say that, there's 6 million, I think, pit bulls in the country or something like that, and of all the child bites, like I've looked this up. I've checked statistics of deaths from people who were attacked by pit bulls. I think over the last 12 years, it was something like 450 or something like that. That's not a lot.
No.
Not a lot at all. So, and then it's like pit bulls were responsible for, I think,
how many
60% of those?
Do you know how many were like, so was that?
So you have like 450 people or something like that over the past 12 years.
All dogs or pit bulls?
No, all dogs.
Okay.
And then I think 50 to 60% of those were pit bulls.
I got it.
Right, but still, okay, you take whatever that percentage is. It's like it's still relatively low over time, and it's not. I get it.
Saying like a dozen or 2 dozen a year, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that, yeah.
Maybe. Which is bad, not good, but also, I don't like it.
Yeah. Again, this is where do people want to like actually like go into stats? Or do
I don't care about the stats thing.
Yeah, but
it's such a weak thing when I see a grown man. I don't like pit bulls, dude. Like, okay, loser. I guess.
Pit bulls are the AR-15s of dogs.
100%. Why do you need an AR-15?
That's his new line.
Why do you need an AR-15?
Okay.
Why do you want a pit bull?
He'll take that from me for sure.
Why do you need a pit bull?
This is a staple of our show.
Why do I want an AR-15? Because they're cool as shit.
Yeah.
Why do I want a pit bull? They're cool dogs, man.
Yeah.
I've had a couple.
Yeah. Are they stronger? So look, I mean, it would be interesting even, like, this is not my wheelhouse
Mike,
at
just
all.
take the
but,
L,
but,
dude.
but it would be interesting to see, like, the bite rates of different dogs. And then, of course, given pit bull is one of the strongest
You
breeds
can't
of dogs
deny
with
that.
the strongest
Right.
bite, those bites are going to be a lot more severe.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, okay, you can recognize that. But when people are trying to push a notion that, oh, like, you know, they're all aggressive or whatever, it's just like,
A Chihuahua can't tear your face off. A pit bull can. You like
false.
that? Like,
yeah.
No,
Like,
I
if
don't.
if you gave a pit bull Chihuahua energy,
yeah.
then maybe we should.
There's just so many things that people forget too. Pit bulls, they need to be worked.
Yes.
Like all these big dogs, all these working dogs, they have to be worked. They have to be exercised. If you just get a pit bull and just leave it around the apartment, you know, hopefully it takes it out on your pillow. But yeah, if it snaps and like attacks someone.
I don't know if this is true, but I heard that pit bulls were originally bred to defend children.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's why they call it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they
Oh, I
were
didn't
bred
know that.
specifically to defend children.
Yes. The I can't remember if it's the American Staffordshire pit bull or like one of the different breeds among pit bulls. And I think they did that in England. I think in England they had the terriers that, you know, protected kids, and they also used pit bulls in America for hog hunting. So they'll use pit bulls when you go out and hunt a hog. You can either shoot them from a helicopter, or you go out, you send your pit bulls out, and they drag these because wild hogs are huge.
Yeah.
They drag the hogs down, so you come over with your knife and you slit the hog's neck. Yeah. And that's what they're used for. They're used for hunting. They're used for working. They're used for protection, obviously. But yeah, domesticating dogs, obviously it doesn't happen overnight. They're going to be temperaments that you kind of have to, I guess, breed out. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I just advocate for pit bulls just because my experiences have been great with them.
Yeah, same with me, actually.
Yeah.
Same. I've had very positive.
It's just people need to be responsible. You adopt a dog, you know its personality.
That's another thing, right? Is, you know, something that that's often happens in society is this focus on the tool. And a dog is not a tool, but focus so much on, again, so much of it comes from the denial or discomfort around the concept of responsibility. And I think, I'll be honest, and this might be, you know, as someone who leans more libertarian, right? Some people may not like this, but I think we talk too much about rights and not enough about responsibility in society. Yeah. I think talking about rights is extremely important, especially given the time that we live in. But with every right comes a responsibility, right? So if you, and this is something that I think
that's not very libertarian.
That's actually quite conservative, especially from a Burkean perspective.
I think it's, see, but the thing is, people have this idea of like, libertarianism only works in conjunction with morality and ethics and responsibility, right? If it's just like, oh, everyone should be able to own whatever gun they want and take whatever drugs they want and basically do whatever they want.
Anarcho-libertarianism.
Right? If that's that kind of philosophy, which I have some empathy for and some degree of commonality with, it only works at all if people have like a very strong sense of responsibility and morality and ethics and so on. Otherwise, you just have like chaos.
Yes.
Right? You just have chaos. Do you want
you
everyone
have the Chaz?
But
not really, because you have people in charge of those areas.
Yeah,
so
I think this is I think again, here's another point where I think a lot of people on the so-called right, whether conservative or libertarian, are kind of making a messaging error. Is the focus on rights all the time. And by the way, to be honest, I think this mistake is made across the board, really. Yeah. The focus on the rights, me, without the associated conversation on responsibility. So even someone, right? So even people who are like, you know, very, very pro 2A, pro gun rights, pro everyone should have a gun, you should be able to own whatever, right? I think they should say that and emphasize the point of responsibility. Right? Not shy away from it.
It's in the literal language.
Yeah. I think
well-regulated doesn't mean regulated by the government.
Yes.
Regulated in the time meant well-trained, responsible, practiced. Yes. That's what a well-regulated militia meant.
Yeah. I advocate for freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Freedom of speech comes with a responsibility.
100%.
Right? It doesn't, if you just say, oh, everyone should be able to say whatever they want and that's it. It's like, well, yeah, but you're also creating an opening for authoritarians, right? Because then they jump in and they go, yeah, but like, what about this and this?
You can't say this.
This is why we need regulation. This is why we need governmental oversight, right? And it's like, no, you have to have both of those things. So I can advocate for freedom of speech whilst also advocating that you use that freedom of speech responsibly. I'm always saying, like, I'm not here to police people's language all day long, but like, be careful with what comes out of your mouth.
You can yell fire in a crowded theater. You certainly can. Should you?
You should
Probably
if there is a
not.
fire.
Right, exactly.
Right? You should if there is a fire.
Yeah, and you shouldn't if there's not.
Exactly. Yeah, you can say nasty things about people. You can insult people, but should you?
Right.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Is it wholesome? Is it moral? Is it moving things in a better and positive direction? Probably not. Right? And that's the conversation that's often missing, right? Like, yeah, you have a right to have sex with whoever you want in whatever way, a consenting adult. Like you have a right to do that. You even have a right
Is that good in the long term?
Right. You could be in a committed relationship and, you have a right to cheat on that person and whatever. And people be like, oh, well, that's their right. That's their right. It's like, well, you have a responsibility not to. You have a responsibility to control yourself. So, yeah, rights are basically saying like, okay, the police shouldn't come and kick down your door and throw you in a cage or put you on trial for doing the thing.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's good to do or you should do it or it's not morally abhorrent.
Well, that's the problem with this constant self-serving idea. What can I want my freedom, unlimited freedom for me, what I can do, me, because when you put all the emphasis on what can I do? I should be able to do whatever I want to do. And when you're not looking at, just like we talked about with Kai on that last episode, society as this living organism. And then when parts of the society start to get sick or it starts to decay, that has a very, very real effect on the rest of society, even down to hookup culture and promiscuity. You're really trying to tell me that people just sleeping around and doing whatever they want and having promiscuous sex all the time doesn't affect society as a whole? No, I don't accept that. Of course it affects us all. Of course it affects you individually and it affects your community and it affects our country.
Yeah.
And I think the more that we accepted the fact that society is a living organism, the choices that we make have a very, very real impact, I think we'd be much better off. People don't like to admit it.
And do you know why that offends people? Because they know it's true.
They know it's true.
They know it's true, right? So I've noticed that people are more offended by things that they know are true but don't want to be than things that are outright false. And that's interesting,
problem.
right? It's like, well, people know. I mean, even, not everything, people are so obsessed in this like materialistic science. And, not everything is science. Like we do have hearts, right? Like we do have intuition. We have got some kind of internal moral compass that I don't know the exact mechanism. And, maybe a scientist can, say, oh, well, this is just like, that's how it happens. But we all have this thing within us that generally knows when we're doing something that's like good or righteous versus bad and shameful, right? So, if it's, if a dude's there like, he can be completely by himself and he's going through Pornhub or whatever, and he's like, he feels that, he knows that there's something, maybe I shouldn't be, I don't feel great about this. This isn't my proudest moment.
Even the after effect of it.
I wouldn't want people to like see me do this or to like know I do this or whatever. Right. And so like there can be that outward denial, but within there's still that like icky, like maybe.
See, this is, like he's onto something here. I talk about Edmund Burke a lot, who was, they say the first conservative. The Burkean perspective is that humans at the end of the day, reason does not govern us. We are passionate, emotional beings. And to think that, and that's why the Enlightenment there was so much about the Enlightenment that a lot of conservatives had trouble with, because reason is now king, right? This idea of reason and science. But at the end of the day, especially from a Burkean perspective, humans are passionate, emotional beings. And I actually believe that to be true, much more than us being rational and reasonable beings. Yes, of course, we're very capable of reason and thinking scientifically, but at the end of the day, what really drives us? I mean, you can see that happening too. What drives us is passion. What drives us is emotion, which is why that whole thing, facts don't care about your feelings. Feelings don't care about your facts. There's a lot of times there's no fact, which is why we talk about art all the time. Things that conservatives get wrong, they don't get culture and they don't get art. And they just want to talk about facts, statistics. They matter, but at the end of the day, you're not going to change minds by throwing statistics at somebody. You're going to change minds by making them feel something, by making them feel they're part of something greater, by making them feel like they want to be like what you have. They want to be like you. That's much more influential.
Stories and narratives. And something, again, another heuristic, and I think this is really important for analyzing the, almost like a predictive model to know which way a society is going to trend. And this includes like, small societies or places in the individual communities and stuff, is what is considered cool?
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
What is considered cool?
Yeah.
And I think an uphill battle for sensible people and, perhaps conservatives and so on is it has to be cool, especially for young people. If you want to win the next generation, you have to make those ideas and behaviors and outcomes and so on cool. If you have take two individual communities, they could even be in the same country or in the same city, right? In this one, it's cool. What's considered cool is selling drugs and having a lot of baby mamas or baby fathers and not, skipping school, not going to college. Going to jail is considered cool. There's communities where going to jail is considered cool.
Yeah.
It's considered a badge of honor as a man, right?
Goodfellas.
Right? That's all considered cool. And then you can take another community where, actually going to college is considered cool.
Yeah.
Getting a degree is considered cool. Like actually having a stable relationship and raising good children, like that's considered cool and all of that. And I can tell you which of these is going to have better outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Right? And I think I don't know. I think this is where the power of art and culture and society and messaging and storytelling to be, because that's what it all is. It's storytelling.
Yeah.
It's storytelling. As young people, from a child even into adulthood, we're all kind of like these characters in our own movie or book, and we're aspiring towards certain things, even former stories that exist, and you're on your own hero's journey. And I think those narratives, it's hard to, what is a culture? A culture is largely a series of narratives or stories that are existed and believed and adopted and aspired to within a certain group of people, whether that's on a national scale or on a more local scale or even on a familial scale. So I think for a long time, especially more right-leaning people have missed that. And abandoned the culture and the arts and movies and comedy and music and all this, which is why I still kind of cringe when obviously my audience is typically more conservative leaning, and I'm a rapper, right?
Yeah.
And
this was a question for you.
Yeah, and when I see certain super boomer takes on like hip hop and rap, just like
they missed the mark.
It's like no wonder conservatives are losing.
Straight out of 1992, I'm kind of like, guys, like.
What's just even the new thing?
Come on.
You know what's cool? Kate Bush running up that hill in Stranger Things.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
You know what's not cool? Conservatives saying that's the devil. That song is about the devil, and this whole show is demonic. And it's just like, guys.
Yeah, you guys are missing it.
There's a level, and you can also, and you can criticize certain elements of things while also bringing out the positives of this. And actually, it hasn't been asked in this interview, but a question I get a lot as a rapper is, about the impact, positive or negative, of rappers' lyrics and what they put out there and so on and so forth. And of course, I can't speak on behalf of every other artist. I can only speak on behalf of the content I put out there. But I think, and this is one of my big criticisms actually with a lot of rappers in hip hop.
Currently
is for decades, my entire life, is that I think there are two ways to look at, if someone asks a general question, say, do you think hip hop and rap is a positive or negative influence on young people? And I think there are two really different ways to look at it, right? I think on a superficial level, right, just listening to exactly what some of these artists are saying, especially if you're talking like, gangster rap or some of the, more mainstream degenerate stuff, it's clearly debauched, and, there's a lot of negativity and violence and so on, and promoting drug dealing, drug use, so on and so forth.
An actual devil.
And that's that's negative. But the meta narrative of hip hop, I think, is so incredibly positive, right? Even with some of the rappers who are talking a lot of nonsense, if you look at what they've done, rather than what they're saying, and I think it's a shame that more of them don't align actually the way they really live their lives and what they've achieved and aspired to and how they've done it. I wish more of them would align that with their lyrics. What some of these people have achieved is phenomenal. Like, what a bigger story of an actual American dream. All right. Some of these guys literally grew up in the hood, grew up in the ghetto. They were in gangs.
Jay-Z.
They were selling drugs. They were doing this. They were doing that. And now they're multimillionaire, some cases billionaire businessmen with different brands and clothing lines. And they're doing movies and they're creating production studios and all of this. And I'm just like, man, like some of these, I'm like, put that in your lyrics, man. Like, that's such an inspiring, amazing story. But then so many will still get back in the studio and still be, you know, click, clack, bang, bang, you know, guns, bitches, drugs, hoes. And it's kind of like, for me, it feels like a missed opportunity. And because of I'm who I am and I've got my, you know, come from a very stable family and I'm well educated and whatnot, I can take the meta narrative very clearly and separate it from exactly what they're saying. So some people I met, like, even listen to some of the music I listen to and like, dude, like, how can you? Yeah. I remember when I was in school, because I always had hip hop blaring from my room. And one thing people know about me is I don't use profanity, right? I don't cuss. And they're like, how can you listen to that much music like that with that much profanity and you don't not even cuss? And I'm like, doesn't. I'm like, I'm just taking. I'm eating the meat and spitting out the bones. Like, I'm taking the positivity from it and the motivation and the aspirational aspects. And yeah, there's all that other crap, but like, it's not influencing me. And not everyone can do that clear delineation and separation. And maybe some should argue that they shouldn't have to. But I think that's a really interesting part. I think the meta narrative of so many of these individual stories, even people whose music I don't like or listen to or whatever, it's like you can still see where they started and what they've done and what they had to do to get there. And if you can take that and you can apply it towards whatever you're doing, your own business, your career, the persistence, the determination, the hard work, getting over obstacles, dealing with rejection, you know, putting out a lot of like whatever it is, you can, oh, you know what? I see how that person built their music career. I'm going to, let me apply that to my podcast. Let me apply that to my writing. You could see the phonies.
You could see the phonies. You could see the people who are pushed by the mainstream music industry. That's why I love Kanye West, man. I've always admired him, especially going back to like, as a producer, this is a guy who was trying to get major record label deals, didn't get them, ultimately pushed hard enough where he got Rockefeller to sign him. But he never rapped about, like, you know, the click clack, the guns, booty, bitches. In certain ways he did, but he mostly rapped about his life experience as he was making music. He either talked about his past with his parents or, you know, very little about like actually growing up in Chi-Town, what he experienced. I said Chi-Town. Oh my God, Chicago. But it was his music is just like stream of consciousness almost. So it's not, you know, the gangster rap of the 90s where it's just like, I'm going to kill all these people. I'm selling all these drugs. Look at me. Look at all this money. I think he's just in a separate playing field, almost in a different sport because he's still, even today, separated from a lot of these mainstream rappers who I don't even get what that is now anymore. Like I've stopped listening to hip hop from like 2019 and on. Basically,
you know, and when it comes to lyrics, there's also a difference between documenting and storytelling versus outright glorification.
Right.
Which is another part. So you can have someone who's like, you know, a rapper who raps about violence and raps about street life and raps about all that stuff. The way that Mobb Deep rapped about it. But it's not in a way that's like glorifying it. It's more like, okay, this is what was around me. This is what I saw. This is what I went through. And you're telling that story and it can still be gritty and hard hitting. But there can still be, but you know, a lot of people around me got killed or went to prison or whatever. Right. There's that conclusion, which is like, okay, like that's not telling, you know, pushing a message out to little kids or teenagers that, just
like, telling your story.
This is exactly what you should do. And there's no consequences to it and whatever. It's like, no, like here are the different sides of it. And there can be the side that looks like glorious, or you're making money, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, whatever. But there's also like, you know, there's prison and there's murder and there's that. And even that to me is more balanced than just like murder, death, kill, you know, like as if that's just cool and there's no real consequences to it or whatever. But ultimately, I can only, that was my thing when I started in music. I was like, look, man, like I can't and don't want to control what everyone else is doing or saying or putting out there. I can just, through my own music and actions and lyrics, I'll put out my message and promote what I want to promote. And, people can take that or leave it. We can only do what we can do as individuals.
Yeah.
Let's get into some questions.
Some cues. Q&A.
Okay, Joseph Ramos.
Good friend of the show.
Cool.
Why does a successful artist like Stormzy go around saying he's oppressed? I don't know the context too much. I'm sure there is
doesn't
one.
really.
He doesn't really?
He doesn't all that much, to be honest with you.
I know who Stormzy is.
Stormzy's great.
He's a British rap
Stormzy's
artist.
dope.
Yeah.
I've actually met him.
Okay.
Very humble dude, especially considering how stupidly successful he is now.
Yeah.
I don't think he really does.
What would be the impetus for a question like that? Is it maybe things that are splashed across headlines? Maybe.
Well, I think this is the problem with the polarization and reactionaryism. Is I think there can be times where people want to address real or perceived racism or discrimination or oppression or whatever in society.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, especially American conservatives, have been so they've grown so sort of tired of being called racist and everything being called racist for so long that they kind of have this knee-jerk reactionary response to not want to listen to it,
right,
or address it. They just want to say, oh, like there's, like they kind of want to.
He's a victim. He's making himself out to be a victim.
Yeah, they don't really want to address what's really being said. And I understand that because it has been tiring over
when
everything is racist. Everything is white supremacy. Everything's systemic, institutional, constructional. Like you hear these terms so many times, often dished out in disingenuous ways that when someone has like an actual concern, which could be valid.
Yeah. You might mistakenly
sometimes
not pay attention to it. Yeah.
Like, he's just being a woke race baiting fool or whatever. So I think there are some statements that he's made talking about, racism in the UK.
Yeah.
That he's perhaps experienced or other people have. And I think some people, he's just like on that, woke crap. There's no race. And
gotcha.
I think that's where that stems from. There could be something maybe he said, which like I totally missed.
Right.
But
could be.
Generally, when I listen to him, that's not the message I'm
What did
getting.
he say, Joe, in the comments? Put that out
I
there.
could be missing something.
Definitely not Ben. Definitely not Ben. He wants to know, who's the most overrated artist of the past 20 years?
Oh, wow.
That's a good question.
Most overrated artist of the past 20 years. In all genres?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, not just rap and hip hop.
Wow.
Should we narrow it down to rap and hip hop?
I'm just trying to think of who I think is overrated. Oh, there are plenty who I think are just overrated. And then there are plenty who've become overrated. Like they started out so strong, like Justin Timberlake's solo career. Amazing.
Right? I was talking about that recently.
And then the last couple hours.
I loved his early solo stuff.
Oh, Taylor Swift. Overrated.
Yeah, but I don't think she was ever actually like revered as an excellent artist, but more of like a pop star. I don't think anyone ever said like Taylor Swift is an amazing artist. Or
there
did
are
they?
Plenty of people who said that.
Yeah, but like Swifties or whatever they're called may have said that, but I don't think anyone serious has really said that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I don't know. I
overrated. It's such a it's
an odd one.
You have to give us parameters. You know what I mean? Like it's very hard to speak generally.
Music is also so
subjective. Yeah.
It's, one man's trash is another man's.
Like a lot of people would say Kanye's overrated because everyone praises him. But no, he might have equal like criticism to the praise. So I don't know if he can necessarily be considered overrated.
Graduation. That's still one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know.
Yeezus is my favorite Kanye album.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think Yeezus is trash. But
we can talk about it. But
I think it's his worst one.
Really?
What do you think his best one is?
Between College Dropout, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and Graduation.
Well, he didn't say 808s and Heartbreak, so that's fine.
Oh,
wait, do you like 808s?
I don't like 808s
either.
I have a personal connection to Yeezus. That's why.
So maybe.
Do you like The Life of Pablo?
It's all right.
There are a couple
I don't
tracks
find
I really
myself
liked.
going back and listening to it.
Yeah.
I don't find it that sticky.
Kanye West played for me. I was in the room anyway. He played a song with a certain gigantic pop star that was unreleased still to this day.
Oh, really?
And I remember he's like, so here's the track I did with, and I was like, what? And then he played it, and I said, what is this? When are you putting this out? I don't know. That's what he said. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When was that?
2013.
Oh, okay.
No, 2012. I was in the studio with Justin Bieber, and then Kanye was in a neighboring studio. He came in and played some of these songs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then he complimented me. So thank you.
On what?
He was talking about Sgt. Pepper. He was talking to Justin Bieber about Sgt. Pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, if you really want to get into it, you should probably listen to Pet Sounds before you do Sgt. Pepper's. And then if you want to really, really get into it, you should probably listen to Revolver before Pet Sounds. And he was like, who are you? Who are you? And I was like, oh, I'm his photographer. He's like, you should listen to him more.
That is a nice compliment.
Thank you, Kanye.
Did JB listen to you more after that?
I don't know. I don't think he sat down and listened to Revolver or, Pet Sounds or anything like that. He could have. I don't know.
JB, now that you're not touring because your face is a little bit paralyzed, come on the show.
Yeah, come on the show and let's talk about.
Let's
wouldn't
talk
that be
about
great?
Ramsey Hunt syndrome.
I think if anybody can at JB on Twitter and Instagram tell him to go on the ITG podcast.
His handlers would not let
No,
him.
they wouldn't like.
His
They wouldn't
handlers
like it.
would be like, no way.
Third Coast Texas Toast with a picture of Daria for
She's a good
Avatar.
friend in the show.
Yeah, she is. What are some things you do to stay positive today? Thank you for getting me through 2020.
Oh, thank you. I'm amazed how many people have said that to me in person, just randomly on the street and stuff.
That's a nice thing to hear, isn't it?
is,
Wow.
yeah.
Isn't it
Like,
also a weird thing to hear? Like,
It
really?
is.
I
It is.
did that?
Yeah, you don't realize how your words are impacting people.
Mm.
This comes back to what we were saying earlier. Things I do to stay positive. Implicitly and explicitly, constantly take stock of what I have to be grateful for. Practice gratitude a lot. Want what you have. Wanting what you have is more important than having what you want. And man, there's so much to be grateful for with all the criticisms and all the negative things and dark stuff in our society and things to be worried about and want to, discuss. We still do live in. We're all so blessed. We have so much to be grateful for, even simply being able-bodied. If you're able-bodied, if you're healthy, your family, your friends, your country, the time you were born in, the place you were born in, having a roof over your head, not wanting for a meal, all this pretty basic stuff. You can't lose sight of it. And then beyond that, live with a purpose. It can take many years, I think, for someone to know what the purpose of their life is and what their calling is. But I think once you find it and you live with that purpose, I'm always happy, right? Even when I'm kind of angry or I'm annoyed, I'm still happy fundamentally. Like I'm fundamentally a happy person.
That's what my wife says about me.
I'm living my dream. I'm pursuing every single day. I'm on this path. I'm pursuing what I want. And it's impacting people in a positive way, and I'm enjoying the process, even through all the ups and downs. So if you can find that thing that every single day, or those things that every day, you get up and even if you're tired, you haven't slept well, or whatever's going on, you still fundamentally on a deep base level are happy, then I think that's a real key to life. And I think a lot of people don't find that, but I think they could.
Yeah.
I think they could if they really looked within and thought about it.
You know what the major motivator is when you're talking about being thankful for what you got, where you were born, who your parents are, your physical ability as far as your body. Seeing people who don't have that, but who still have a smile on their face is such a huge motivator.
Yeah.
You think about these things, and though they're heartbreaking, if you think about a person who's in a wheelchair, lost both of his parents, has struggled to find housing, but is just happy, you know what I mean? Then it's you spend a little bit of time with guilt of what you have, but then you're saying, you know what, if this person is that happy, like, why
this
can't
is why I
be
think
like that?
Americans should travel more.
Yes.
Because when
100%.
I remember living in South America for a while. They are in Peru, like in Bolivia where I traveled, some of the people I met there, some of the happiest, most content people I've ever met on the planet. And they, compared to us, they have nothing. And that's why I think Americans particularly, they just don't travel. And so they don't know what life is like outside America, and they live in this very specific bubble, and it's hard for them to feel this deep sense of gratitude because they really don't know how fortunate they are.
Yeah. And the truth is that, materialism doesn't, and this has been studied for the people who like the science and the studies, like materialism and money, which is something that, we're really trained to pursue. And I don't personally think there's nothing wrong with pursuing wealth through positive means. Those things are not fundamentally what make people happy at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've met people of different levels of wealth and material success and different this becomes very obvious.
It's the meme almost.
It's really obvious. There are people with hundreds of millions or billions of pounds or dollars, and they're miserable and their life sucks and they're not happy. And there's people who are broke or poor and they're surrounded by love and they're living with meaning and they're living with purpose.
They're rich
and they are, and they're happy. So the correlation there isn't as strong as I think people think it is. Like, as long as you're, I think it's shown like there's like a level, and then beyond that, it's something like in the US, it's something like $70,000 a year or $60,000 a year, and any income beyond that has no measurable impact on someone's happiness. Yeah,
actually pretty low.
Because that's
a pretty low number.
Yeah, so once a number where you're not stressing bills. You're not stressing like, oh my gosh, like, do I have enough money to cover this? And like you have enough money to cover.
Here comes the commenters.
Basics.
Yeah, well, I have a family of 5 and I make 60 grand. You think I don't stress about anything? Yeah. No, that's not what he's saying.
So it's something like that. And then if that person, if they earn 700,000 or 7 million a year, there's like a very short-term boost with each thing. It's like if someone buys a Lamborghini for like a week.
Yeah.
They're like, there's a spike in happiness, and then it just quickly comes back down to the base level, and it's just your car.
I have very big wants of very little, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I have very big wants of very little.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Nice house, maybe a cool car that I can fix up, and a whole bunch of guns. Yeah. I don't ask for a lot, very little, but I have big wants and not necessarily big desires. Desires can be dangerous. Big wants though, goals. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I want to be able to send my parents on a really nice first class trip to Italy and Korea.
Yeah.
Because my mom's Korean, dad's Italian. I want to send them on just first class international travel.
And what's so interesting is that that's something that's outside of you.
Yeah.
That's not you want to send yourself on that trip. Right. And even that says something, that you want that for the people who raised you.
Yeah. And who sacrificed a lot for me.
Yeah, exactly. So
dads.
Dads,
they're so important. They really are. Like, I can't stress it. Like, I have just Father's Day is coming up. This is a perfect plug for Father's Day. It's such a stupid holiday when you think about things. We get a whole month of Pride, but we get one day a year to talk about like our mothers or our fathers. Like, absolutely ridiculous. But my dad, just God bless him, like 3 kids, 3 annoying little redheads. Dude worked 12-hour days, and he would still find the time and not complain. And he would drive me 30 minutes to and from Taekwondo class, or he'd hit ground balls to me. And it's just like, I know kids that don't have that.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but it breaks my heart. And I want everyone to experience what I experienced. I really do. And I like that shit. Like, it breaks my heart when kids are taken from their fathers, but it also breaks my heart when fathers are taken away from their kids by just pure, like, just, what's the word, that just not caring. They're like, I don't want to raise this kid. I'm gone.
Yeah.
I want to give, like, I would give, that's my presidential policy. I'm going to give you a dad.
Give you a dad.
There are plenty of guys out there who can't have kids, that would die to have kids. Like, like Big Brother, Big Sisters programs, so important, but we don't talk about those.
Yeah, because I was talking before about how there are fundamental things that human beings all seek and want, right? One of the most obvious ones is, and you know this as a man especially, right, is as a boy, especially as you get into your preteen and teenage years, a boy is always going to seek a father figure or masculine role model. Yeah. Always. Ideally, it's his own father, but it could end up becoming, on the positive side, could end up becoming, an uncle or a family friend or
even a contemporary.
Like but it's going to be sought somewhere. And also, predators know this. This is why gangs, when they want to recruit people, they look
groomers.
For gangs, groomers, even terrorist groups. They'll look for young men or FBI. Older boys who they'll look for young men who have that disconnection and are looking for that, and they'll offer it, and then they'll want them to engage in stuff that is destructive to society. So you can remove a literal father, but you're not going to remove the desire that a boy is going to have, and a girl to some degree, but I think even stronger for a boy, for that masculine role model.
Yeah.
Because mothers do, generally mothers do a great job, but men and women are different. We have different roles. The role of a mother is not identical to that of a father, nor vice versa. I've never been, despite the times I identify as one, I've never actually been a girl or a woman for a single day in my life, and I never will be. So how could I, if I have a daughter or daughters in the future, there's always going to be a limitation on how much I can completely identify with what they're going through.
You can only guide them with what you know.
I've still got my male. I've still got my male perspective, and I'll have some unique insights.
Sure.
From the male perspective, but I've never been through all that. I've never had a period. I'm never gonna get pregnant.
Dude, Kate Bush might be based.
I've never even just the social interactions. The social interactions between like boys with boys and girls with girls and vice versa. They're different.
Totally different.
They're all different.
Even with my daughter, she's not even 9 months yet. The way she responds to my husband walking in the room versus me, she instantly becomes more playful with her daddy.
Interesting.
That's
Instantly.
me too.
Even with her grandpa, with my dad, when she's just like, I joke all the time. I'm like, she's not even like that excited to see me, because
I think there's safety.
I'm someone very different to her. I give her food. I nurture her. I give her comfort. I put her to sleep most of the time. But when she sees daddy walk into the room, she wants to play. It's totally different. From the minute they're born, they have a completely different reaction to their father and to their mother.
Yeah, it's different. And one thing that dads, uncles, like older males do, like within a family, is just like throw kids around, play fight with them, like push, like physically, like show them the boundaries of like safety and danger.
Put them up
right?
here.
Yeah,
100%.
exactly.
Aggression and restraint are two of the biggest characteristics that a father can impose on you. Because let's say you're getting bullied at school, there's a father can take you to the side and say, "Here's how you throw a punch," but then he's also going to teach you this is when to throw a punch. I think
This is not the first resort.
Right, so invaluable. And that's going to end this podcast. Awesome. We're going to move to locals. So if you guys are watching this now, go on over, become a member at doinggreat.locals.com, because we have a couple more questions for ZUBY here. So thanks, ZUBY, for coming on the show.
Thank you, ZUBY.
Happy to be here.
Bye-bye.
Oh, wait. Before we leave, my wife didn't want me to do this, but sometimes when it's nighttime and the baby's asleep and we want to watch a movie, I say, "Hey, do you want to watch a ZUBY?" And she says, "Okay." So that's what we call movies in our house.
Oh,
we call them ZUBYs.
Okay.
Why Zubys?
I don't know. I don't know
take it.
why I came out with that.
Is
it has nothing to do with you. It's just funny that's what I started to call them.
That is funny.
She didn't want me to say this to him personally.
Okay.
Sorry, Carly.
She's secondhand embarrassed now. But it's at the end, so who knows if she made it this long.
Yeah. It'll be a test to see if she actually watches
Locals,
it. Bye.
guys.
Bye. Thank you very much. Bye.
We got some good questions on locals too.
I'm so hungry. Time is almost
20
2.
minutes max. We can do it.
That's fine.
Okay.